Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1715. The topic is Q&A and the title is Push Phases and Holding Phases for Optimal Weight Loss. I'm talking with one of my business clients today, and we go through, it's typically personal trainers who are wanting to increase just business aspects, whatever it might be, or somebody wanting to open a gym. But this client, they're a trainer, and they're wanting to start doing more with nutritional aspects of coaching. So they love the training part. People just aren't getting as great of results as they would want them to, and they see that nutritional consistency, nutritional adherence, kind of what they're doing nutritionally seems to be holding everything back. This trainer wants to get more familiar with and more confident with nutrition coaching, so we've been talking through that. Now, they reported that they feel like their understanding of creating diets for clients is good. They're like, I know how to do it. I just can't seem to get people to follow it. People, their clients, have just been cheating on the diets. They haven't been consistent, and the trainer is just flustered and unsure of what to do. When we looked at the specifics of the diet in the way that they structured their diets for their clients, there were two glaring kind of mistakes. And like I hesitate a little bit to say like the word mistakes, but there were two aspects of the diet structure that were contributing to why their clients were struggling with adherence. So we talked about the corrections for those things, and I thought it would be fun to share in today's podcast. The two structural components that we made edits to, number one was their diets that they wrote for their clients had specific foods. Breakfast was, 3/4 cup oats, 1 cup blueberries, 1 tablespoon peanut butter, almond milk to taste. It was specific foods, specific measurements, and they commonly started the client with no other options. It was a single option for breakfast, single option for lunch, single option for dinner. If they had kind of meals in between there or snacks, it was single options. And they said that they felt that their clients said that this gave them more confidence because they knew exactly what to do. The problem is that's ridiculously inflexible, and within, a few days, somebody would all of a sudden, I ran out of oats, so I had to eat this instead. I felt like I ruined my diet for the day, so I just ate pizza at lunch and felt like a piece of crap, so I skipped dinner, and it's like, oh my gosh, it just went absolutely chaotic from one small deviation. Or they would eat, like a couple days of the breakfast, and they're like, I'm tired of oats. What else can I do? So the trainer had formatted these single option diets at different calorie counts, and they had a bunch of them. And then they had a multi-meal option that they would then send to the person whenever they reported that they were having issues. And the multi-meal option typically had like 3 options. So breakfast was the oats, with berry and peanut butter, or it might be eggs and, turkey bacon. It was just like, gave them a couple options, but again, it was 3 for breakfast, 3 for lunch, 3 for dinner, and 3 like snack options. The downside is that's just, again, even within that, they're going to run into problems either running out of ingredients, getting bored with only 3 options, or, I traveled this weekend for work, or I traveled with family. We didn't have these things available, so I didn't know what to do, so I just, ate like a jackass. Or they were, for fear of breaking the diet, they ate absolutely nothing. And they felt horrible, and then all of a sudden, later that next week, they go in a binge and overeat extremely because they kind of burn themselves out. So there was chaotic problems all around whenever they tried to make it easy for the client initially. It led to a bunch of heartache and difficulty and trouble later on. So what I like to do is kind of somewhere in the middle, is you can give specific suggestions, but I also like to give my clients macros and kind of like general food lists. What this means is we could say here are some ideas for breakfast. These are all good foods, and in the first 5 to 6 hours, I've talked about breaking your day into like 5 to 6 hour blocks. You only have like 3 parts of a day to worry about. You don't have to worry about the whole damn day at one time. Is in the first 5 to 6 hours, I want you to hit, say, 500 calories with 30 grams of protein. Okay, well, you can either do that all at breakfast, or you can do a breakfast and a mid-morning snack. I don't really care how they break it up, but in the first 5-6 hours, 500 calories, 35 grams of protein. Here are a couple meal options. You can figure out how to kind of blend those and make those out. Now, there's a little bit of uncertainty because they're like, oh gosh, okay, well, if I want oats, how much do I need to add? If I want to have oatmeal and eggs, how many eggs do I need to get close to 35 grams? That's too many eggs, so maybe I can just have some of my protein at that meal, and then mid-morning, maybe I have a couple cheese sticks to finish the rest of the protein, rather than having like 5 eggs at breakfast. There's a little bit of kind of give and take. There's a little bit of guesstimation. There's a little bit of kind of just figuring out what will work best for you. Now, the reason why I prefer that is it's teaching people how to manage nutrition. In the sense that if they can figure this out with the trainer guiding them, they then know this for the rest of their life. That's amazing. They now know how to eat. Rather than, here's 3 meals, eat these, or feel completely lost and fail at everything you do. So we talked about that as one component. Getting rid of specific foods, and instead you can have this food suggestions, like meal suggestions, but include calories and protein targets, include, food substitutions. If you don't want chicken, you can have this, this, or this. If you don't want, peanut butter, you can have this, this, or this. Give people a little more freedom. It can feel overwhelming. I recognize that. So give them some of the specifics to start with, but empower them to make knowledgeable changes if and as needed. The second component we looked at was, and it leads to today's podcast title, they had their diet structured where it was a continuous caloric deficit throughout, from A to B. So if they wanted to go from 185 pounds to 135 pounds, they were going to do that all just continuous the whole way through. The problem with this is it leads to the pressure of the diet being continuous and unrelenting. It's just always on you, always on you, always on you, always on you. Pressure, 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 pressure. Instead, we can use push phases and holding phases. Now, there's research that has actually done that showed that there isn't necessarily any difference in regards to fat loss over an amount of time if the caloric kind of management of the deficit is equal, whether you do phases or not do phases. So you don't need to do phases to have better results in regards to the actual amount of fat lost or the weight lost. Where having phases helps is it decreases the likelihood of people cheating. It decreases that pressure. Having phases improves adherence. Having better adherence improves the success of the diet. That leads to happier clients, leads to more clients if you're a personal trainer. Whether you're a trainer or not, you should consider using phases. Now, what that looks like is a push phase is you have a purposeful caloric deficit. And you're going to do that for X amount of time. Sometimes I'll do push phases 2 weeks. I'll do them as long as 6. I every once in a while I've done them as long as 8, but I don't really like them too much longer than that or even at that length. So push phases, maybe 2 to 8 weeks, we'll just say that, is you're going to be in a purposeful caloric deficit, and you're going to be, forced to make really good choices. You're going to have to calculate everything. You're going to have to be very aware of what you're doing. You might start to have some cravings that you just have to say no to. There's a lot of willpower management that you have to do during push phases. A holding phase is usually shorter. This could be as short as 1 week. It can be sometimes up to half the amount of the push phase. So if I did a push phase for 8 weeks, I might hold for 4. I typically do it somewhere around like a third or a fourth of the time. So if I did 8-week push phase, I might do 2 weeks of a hold phase. If I did a 6-week push phase, I might do still a 2-week, maybe a 3-week even hold phase. It just depends. What happens during the hold phase is you aim for caloric maintenance rather than a caloric deficit. This decreases the stress that the body feels from the caloric deficits. This decreases cravings. This decreases sensations of hunger. This allows a person to feel relieved from some of the pressure of the diet. what they found in research was this increases adherence. When people have periodic breaks from the pressure, they tend to do better overall. So if I'm going to diet for 16 weeks, if I have a few scheduled phases in there, I'm going to have much better adherence over 16 weeks than if I tried to just diet at a caloric deficit for straight 16 weeks. The push phase, again, is a purposeful caloric deficit aiming to be somewhere between 1 to 2 pounds of average weight loss per week. So if I do it over 8 weeks, I'd like to lose between 8 to 16 pounds. Sometimes people do a little bit more. You don't want to necessarily do any less because you might not be actually making much progress. So 1 to 2 pounds per week on average is a pretty good average. The hold phase, the purpose is to actually eat at caloric maintenance, and you want to kind of actually hold your weight. Typically, people might actually still continue to lose a little bit, but it's okay to hold weight. Now, there's also going to be a little bit of variance. We know that if we weigh ourselves every single day, different fluid intake, different sodium intake, different activity levels, different humidity. Golly, there are so many things that factor into daily weight. So a person's weight might fluctuate, say 1 to 2%, throughout the holding phase, but if it's like, say, a 4-week holding phase, you would aim to start and end the holding phase with either the same weight or maybe a little bit lost, but typically it's not even at the rate of 1 pound lost per week. So if they have a 4-week holding phase, they might lose 2 pounds during that phase, and that's okay. We don't want them to go up in weight. Maybe if they go up within like a 1% variant. So if they weigh 150, they might go up to 151.5. That's okay. So if it's a small little, margin of error or margin of variance, that's totally fine. But the idea of the holding phase is you're not intently trying to drive the weight down as you would during a push phase. The key, though, is to make sure that you understand push phases or holding phases are still intentional efforts towards your diet. You can't just go off the diet and not track any calories and, eat like a butthead. So you still have to actually pay attention to what you're doing. You still have to track everything. It's just you're intentionally reducing some of the pressure of the diet. So then during the push phase, you can push even harder. By adding in phases, it, again, doesn't really impact the amount of fat lost compared to continuous caloric deficits throughout. But the big winner, like why it's actually beneficial, is it improves adherence. And if you improve adherence, you improve the fact that the people are actually going to follow the damn diet, and then that actually allows them to be successful. They feel better throughout the entire process rather than feeling like they're always screwing things up and they have no willpower and they have no self-control. It's not that they don't. They're just burned out and they're making really bad choices because they're so damn tired of the pressure. Relieve some of the pressure. That's the idea of phases. So use phases to get better adherence, to get better rate of success. So if you're a trainer, that not only just helps you feel better because you're actually helping people at a greater rate of success, it also leads to happier clients, they get more referrals, and you get more business. If you're not a trainer, it's just going to help you get your goals. So if your goal is to lose fat, this will help you be more successful. So use phases, very helpful. I just thought that would be fun to share. It was a great discussion, and I wanted to make sure everybody else knew about it. Cool. Well, if you have any questions, any follow-up stuff you want to know, shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please share the podcast. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support it, which you can do on our website. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can also find more from us on our social media channels. On Instagram and YouTube, you can find us and follow us under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.